Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Starboars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
In a world where people need 80s and 90s movie reviews, two regular Geordies combine forces to bring you the Brother to Brother 80s and 90s movie review podcast. Check them out on Twitter, YouTube, and all decent podcast vendors.
Starboars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Starboars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete, and we're back with a brand new of our specials. It's Knowing Me, Knowing You. Aha! For those that don't know, Knowing Me, Knowing You was started when the COVID pandemic began, mainly because I was worried about Star Wars news not coming out, but would production stop, that type of thing. Now, we all know that sort of didn't really happen, but what I was able to do was have fantastic conversations with Star Wars fans across the world, really, and have some fantastic Star Wars conversations. And that's what we're going to do today. So today it is Geordie Jedi Pete, Knowing Me, Knowing You, aha. And we have today's special guest, Mark Newbold, who is, of course, the daily content manager over at Fantha Tracks. Mark, how are you?
I'm very well, knowing me, knowing you, aha. Yes, I'm good. I'm getting over a cold, so if I sound a bit bunged up and rough-voiced and there's a bit of coughing in the background, you know why. It's me. I would normally blame the dog, but it's definitely me.
So it's been a crazy few months. I think we've been trying to record this a few different times, obviously with different illnesses and things getting in the way.
Just a few, yeah.
But the main thing is you have 5 Star Wars related questions to ask me, correct?
I do, yes.
Fantastic. And I have 5 Star Wars related questions to ask you, which is also correct, and that's what we need to have a fantastic Star Wars conversation. I'll get started and I'll ask the first one. Are you ready, Mark?
I am ready.
Fantastic. Light speed to Knowing Me, Knowing You, as they would say if we were in a Disney park. So my first question, obviously, I think me and you haven't formally met, I don't believe, but obviously I was at the Star Wars Family Fun Day that was down in Blackburn just sort of a few months ago, or it feels like a few months ago anyway. And I think I was hoping to catch you, but then I think I ended up being quite busy, and then I seen you were very busy sort of interviewing a lot of the guests there. So my question is, has there been a Star Wars related interview or celebrity meeting that's been your favourite, and why?
Ooh, I've been very lucky because writing for The Insider and different bits and bobs, excuse me, and doing interviews has kind of been my thing. So I've had the good fortune to interview some really cool people. But I would say if I had to pick one that was the standout, it would have to be Irving Kershner. So I managed to interview him in, it's about 15 years ago now, about 2008. 2008 doesn't sound like 15 years ago to me, but it is. It all came about. I'd interviewed Rick McCullum for my old site, Lightsaber. I used to run a site for about 10 years called Lightsaber before I joined Jedi News. And that really, it started off as a fan fiction site, then it became a news site, but the interviews was really what kind of got me known in the sort of the fan community. And I interviewed Rick McCullum. We finished talking, much like we are now, and at the end, just a bit of chit-chat, really, which I wasn't expecting because I was told he was very, very busy, and we ended up talking for about 40 minutes. And I can't even think how we came to it, but I basically said, I've wanted to interview Irving Kershner forever. You know, he's next on my list. I think I'd got his home phone number. Weirdly, the Directors Guild of America gave me his home phone number, which was just random. I wasn't BSing. I was just legitimately saying I'm trying to do an interview with him. I'm from a fan site, blah, blah, blah. And Rick said, don't worry about that. We'll sort that out for you. And literally less than a week later, I was on the phone talking to Kirsch. And we had half an hour just talking predominantly about Empire Strikes Back. And I just remember thinking, I've still got the recording. It's out there on Fantha somewhere. But I just remember thinking, be respectful. Don't just piling, asking him all the cool questions about Empire, asking him a bit about RoboCop 2 and Man Named Horse and Eyes of Laura Mars and RoboCop, all the other stuff that he'd done, Never Say Never Again, and the other stuff. And I think he was savvy enough to know that I really wanted to talk about Empire. So every time I sort of started talking about one of these other projects, he very sweetly drew me back. And after about 5 minutes, I thought, hey, he's been really nice here. He's just let me talk about Empire. So we had like half an hour talking about Empire. And of course, he passed away. I can't remember when he passed away, about 2010. So obviously he's not available for interviews at the moment. But I was very fortunate. So I would say, like I say, I've interviewed some really cool people. But I think because it's my favourite film as well, I think that probably would take some topping.
Yeah, that's really awesome and really sweet how he sort of took you back to Empire to talk about the things you were really passionate about as well. I think just shows what a nice guy he was.
Yeah.
I haven't really interviewed or had many celebrity meetings in the Star Wars things. I think for me, one of the ones that steps out of my mind for me is obviously my first celebration was Celebration London in 2016.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the first celebrations. Sort of, I think it was the one where they first showed sort of the Rogue One panel and the Rogue One trailer, or a Rogue One trailer anyway to the people who were in attendance. But so I bumped into sort of Dave Filoni on the convention floor.
Yeah,
and there wasn't too much fuss around him. He certainly wouldn't be able to do that now. And in any country, I don't think, and had that con been in America, it certainly wouldn't happen either. But I was able to sort of get a picture with him, ask him a couple of questions, and just spend a bit of time with him. That was, really, really sweet that he did that. So that's sort of one of my favorites. What is your first question for me, Mark?
Well, he said clearing his throat. My first question for you is: what is your favourite film, or non-Star Wars film, that stars a Star Wars actor? So what's your favourite film that's got a Star Wars actor in it but isn't Star Wars?
Ooh, I mean, it's probably going to have to be Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'd imagine, with Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the best blockbusters out there. One of the best adventure movies. So yeah, I do love that. I love all the Indiana Joneses. So probably that one. I'm trying to think. I'm a big fan of Adam Driver. I think Adam Driver's, I say this quite a lot, and some people do it after sometimes, but I think of his generation of actors, I think he's one of the best out there at the minute as a leading man, and also as a not being a leading man, but sort of stealing the show, which he's done in quite a few movies. So, I think if you look at, let's just say, Star Wars Legends, I'm going to go with Raiders of the Lost Ark, obviously Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones. And I think as new Star Wars actors, I'll go Adam Driver, and I'll just go with his performance in I think it was Logan Lucky or Lucky Logan.
Oh yes, Logan Lucky was brilliant. Yeah, he was the bartender.
Yeah, quite a funny character as well. So I quite enjoyed him in that. I enjoyed him in Black Klansman as well. Fantastic way going. Game where he's not the main character, but he sort of steals the movie almost in both those movies. So I'm going to cheat and go for two there.
That's a good shout. I met him once. I met him at the Last Jedi premiere, and we're both about the same height. I'm 6'4" and he's 6'4". I'm not an imposing, serious-looking 6'4". He is. He was quite intimidating. he looked about 6 inches taller than me, but he's not. But he's proper serious game face on him. But he was chatting to all the fans, and he was absolutely delightful. So that maybe that's just his demeanour, which is probably quite handy. And he's an ex-Marine, isn't he? So he's got that sort of bearing about him. But I've got to agree with Raiders. I'd say after Star Wars and Empire, that's my favourite film. So Star Wars, Empire, Raiders, and Blues Brothers are my 4 favourite films. So
lots of Star Wars connections in those.
Loads, yeah.
My next question for you is: what's your favourite thing about Star Wars since the Disney acquisition of Lucasfilm?
That's a good question, actually. I was thinking about this the other day because obviously it's just over 10 years now, isn't it, since it actually all went through and became a thing. And we still talk about, the acquisition as if it's relatively new, and it's over a decade. And Kathleen Kennedy had been in charge for 6 months before that happened. She was kind of there to to shepherd it along and do the handover and all that malarkey. So I guess I don't know. I'm in two minds. What I think Star Wars was always special because it was rare in the sense that you had the one comic, you had the odd book, you had a film every 3 years, a couple of seasons of animated, a couple of TV movies. Star Wars was relatively sparse until you got to the 90s, and then the book started, Heir to the Empire and Dark Horse Takeover, and it starts to build because Lucasfilm have got the confidence that it's still going to go. But even through all of that, with this prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars and all that stuff, you think Disney in that 10 years, as you could say, they've put out more in 10 years than Lucasfilm put out in 35 years. So, it's an interesting comparison between the two. So part of me thinks I kind of liked it when it was, wow, the circus is coming to town. It was an event. It was more of an event. Whereas when we had that 5-year run of a film every year, it wasn't the event that it used to be. Flip the reality of that, though, and take my old fart shoes off and think, well, it's 2020 whatever now, or 20, the 20 teens or whatever you wanted to call it. And the world's changed. People can watch films on their phones. They've got Disney Plus. You can download stuff. The world's more immediate. Is the world going to wait 3 years for a Star Wars film in this century like it did at the end of the last one? I don't think they would. So trying to put the reality into the situation, I'd probably say it's that. It's the fact that, okay, quality, it's the same with everything. Even high quality stuff, there's always something that's better than something else. So while the quality, it's all perception, maybe up and down on various things, there's loads of Star Wars. And the key thing is, and I learned this more as I get older, excuse me, is that you don't have to watch all of it. You don't have to love all of it, and you don't have to know all of it. You kind of just have to have enough of a view on it to be conversational. I'd say it's that. I'd say the fact that they've took this brand, brought it into the Disney company, and they're going for it. And Marvel, people compare Marvel to Star Wars, and I don't think you can compare the two things because Marvel's built and structured very differently to Star Wars. We haven't had a Star Wars film now. We're into our 4th year without a film, and I don't see another Star Wars film for at least another couple of years, if not longer. I don't think that's a bad thing, whilst Disney Plus is ramping up and other things are happening. But I'd say it's that. I'd say the fact that they've actually pushed the boat out and actually gone for it with content.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think yes, we'll have another movie in a few years, and there's movies in sort of development phase now, and even if one of them goes into production, it's probably going to be 2 years before we see that, unless it's a really quick production. So 1 year at the very best, but that's thinking generously. But I think while that's the case, I think this year alone, we've got like Bad Batch airing currently. Mando's coming on March the 4th. We know we've got Ahsoka coming this year. We've just had Andor at the back end of last year. So like that's 4 shows before we even look at the sort of the end of this year. So there's a lot happening on Disney Plus. I think for me, Disney means money, and I think it means they can invest a lot more. So I haven't been yet, but the fact that we've got a Star Wars theme park now in the Disney parks is huge. Yes, we've had the Star Wars ride before, but now they own the company. It's like, no, we'll go all in. We'll build the park. If you look at again, I've not been to the park, so I definitely haven't been on the Galactic Star Cruiser, the sort of Star Wars hotel experience. But again, like there's no way they would be pushing the boundaries to do that type of experience with Star Wars. The first thing of its type that they've done, and they've chosen to do it with the Star Wars franchise. I think it says a lot about how much it means to them to have it in the umbrella. I think if you look at things like the Publish Initiative, the High Republic, which I'm a bit behind on, but I'm enjoying. And again, it's not something that Lucasfilm haven't done before because we've had Shadows of the Empire, but this is sort of it's in multiple phases. It's across a lot of different mediums. It could even extend to further mediums as it goes on. We don't know, but it's a lot bigger, if that makes sense. And it's getting a lot of different people to come in and tell their Star Wars story. A lot of different voices, which is good. And again, what you said about like sort of liking the bits you like, and there'll be bits that you're not going to bother with. There's plenty of choice out there, so it's almost like a big buffet of Star Wars. And you can go and enjoy the bits you like, and you can sort of leave the bits that you maybe don't catch your eye, and someone else that'll catch someone else's eye, and they'll go and enjoy that. And then you're right, whether it's that Star Wars Celebration or just any convention or just seeing someone in the street with a Star Wars t-shirt on, you might strike up a conversation and be talking about things that A, you might have in common, or B, we could be talking about something that I love about Star Wars that you haven't seen, and then I could even turn you on to that. So yeah, I think the content is fantastic. How they've stood by what they said when they said, we're going to make everything canon going forward, and they've produced a lot of canon, is what I would say, and a lot of it's good. The bits I've really enjoyed, and I enjoy the fact that there's a lot out there for a lot of different people to enjoy.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. Sorry, I wouldn't argue with that. I think if they took the foot off the gas now, it would feel weird. But the fact that they're putting so much out there, excuse me, and like you say about the High Republic, multiple eras now. You've still got Old Republic, the game going, which isn't canon, but it's still there, and High Republic and prequel stuff still busy and interesting. And now they're in between the trilogies with Kenobi and Andor and everything else, and gone beyond with Mandalorian. And I fully expect once you get onto the sequel trilogy, and Daisy's now saying, well, I'm at the end of the phone. So, there's potential there. So they've really broadened the scope of the Star Wars storytelling. So, yeah, it's a good time to be a fan.
It's slightly off topic, but you brought up Daisy there. I think it was last month, she was at Lucasfilm for a lunch, just for a lunch. It's a long way to go for just a lunch, I think. And then obviously this recent interview that's just surfaced this week. Do you think something's cooking there for a bit of Rey?
It wouldn't surprise me. In sort of on two angles. One, it's work, and she's a working actor, and I'm sure financially they look after her, and her bargaining power after 3 films that have done $1 billion plus one that did $2 billion is probably pretty hefty. So you've got to pay the mortgage. So I think on that angle. And there's the majority. There's always people who don't like this and don't like that. They are so the minority in percentages because they shout the loudest. So it looks like there's more of them than there is. People who like it are generally either ambivalent to the grumbling or say their bit. So I think you could see her, and I think Oscar Isaac said the same. If there's a great script and a great story, and I liked working with everyone, so he said he'd do something. Boyega seems to be the one that might be the holdout. But again, I think if the storyline was something intriguing, he said about certain elements of the character that they might have took it in one direction or another and it never quite panned out. But if they, the writers, thought, yeah, let's pick up on that and do something with that, Finn Force sensitivity, which you kind of got more of in Rise of Skywalker, then I think he could go, well, actually, now that's a story I want to see. So bring those 3 front and center as not as a lead actress and 2 supports or 2 leads, and bring them back as a trio, like a power trio. They're all equally there with their own story threads to tell, be it Disney Plus or more films. And my head tells me Disney Plus would make more sense, to be fair. I think you could see it, but again, I still think that George always said about there's 6 films, there's 9 films. At one point, there's 12 films. So if they did another 3 films and carried it on, no one's going to mind. No one's going to worry about that. It's Rey Skywalker now, so it's still the Skywalker saga. I'm wobbling on, but yeah, I wouldn't be remotely surprised if she came back.
I hope so. I love the character of Rey. I thought Daisy is a fantastic actress. So, I think if we get some more Rey, I'm fully up for that. What is your question for me, Mark?
My question for you, it's a fairly straightforward question. Which is your favourite alien species? Not character, but species. And why?
So I was saying alien and not creature.
Either. It's a fairly broad question, but yeah. Whichever one you fancy answering.
Ooh. So I think my favourite, I'll do one for each. So in my head, when I say alien, I mean a creature that's like quite sentient, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I think my favourite is probably, I love the Mon Calamari, obviously, Admiral Akbar. But it's close between Adam Blackburn and obviously Nine who was a Celestian.
Yeah.
Just because of Return of the Jedi, which actually has anniversary this year. Actually, 40 years. Is this for
40? Yeah.
40 years for Return of the Jedi? But I just remember like that movie as a sort of, I watched them in the early 90s. My cousin got me into Star Wars, so watching them on basis, but sort of seeing how much sort of dialogue and emotion you could get out of those faces, like did a lot of me as a child to sort of really believe and have a great imagination. So I'm going to go with Nine the Celestian is my favourite, just because he's funny, he's serious, he can do it all, and obviously a great pilot. My favourite creature, though, I'm going to say is, I don't know why, but obviously Attack of the Clones came out 2002. I would have been about 12 or 13, I would imagine, when that came out. And I had the action figure of the Reek, which is the sort of the one of the three beasts in the arena to assassinate obviously our heroes, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme. And it's the one that's sort of like a rhino. It's got 3 horns. It's the one that Mace Windu chops the horn off when he's fighting Django. And I don't know why, but as a creature, I just really enjoyed that Reek for some reason. I know he's not as good or awesome as the Rancor, but that just sticks out. I had that toy, and he was sort of causing loads of carnage around all my other heroes.
That's a good shout. The Reek, when you see that scene in the arena, you see the Acklay, you see the Nexu, you see the Reek, and it's like, you couldn't pick 3 more different looking creatures. The Acklay is basically a giant praying mantis with a tiger attitude, and the Nexu, it's a cat but with spider eyes, and then you get the Reek, which, like you say, is basically, it's a mudhorn without the hair, isn't it? It's a rhino. But yeah, he's got. I think he's got the most attitude, the Reek. So I totally get why you would like that one, especially as a kid. It was a great creature. I think for me, species wise, I think Celestians is a really good shout actually, and you don't see enough of them. There's a couple dotted around, but it's mostly Nien Nunb, who of course made it right through to the end of Rise of Skywalker, and then sadly bit the bullet just as they were about to win. But I think my creature would be. I probably would say, you mentioned it, the Rancor. I think it's such a great design, and when you saw it in Book of Boba Fett in the final episode, the Star Wars Connect episode when he's smashing up, Mos Espa, that was just phenomenal to see that going at full tilt. And when you think back to Force Unleashed, that monster bull Rancor and just some crazy stuff in there. So yeah, I say the Rancor's tough to beat.
Out of curiosity, were you aware of the HasLab Rancor that were trying to get funded, and did you back it?
I didn't back it because I get bits of Black Series, but not lots. I was surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, and it's been good grief. If ever they've done an autopsy on a HasLab, it was that one. That Kickstarter campaign, or HasLab campaign, I should say, finished. I don't know, a handful of days before that episode of Book of Boba Fett, and you just look at the timing and think, whoa, wow, why? If only they knew, because you've got to assume Hasbro didn't know that was coming into Book of Boba Fett, because they would have just pushed that Kickstarter further back, because that really would, I think, have enticed enough people to get it over the line. But I felt for them. They've had a couple of HasLabs that didn't quite happen, like the Reaver lightsaber didn't happen, and I think HasLabs are better for vintage collection rather than Black Series, but that's just my personal opinion. But I think just bad timing caught them there.
Definitely. My next question for you is, if you could have been on a Star Wars set to sort of witness any Star Wars scene filming, which would you choose and why?
What a cracking question. I've never been on a Star Wars set. It's on my bucket list of things I really want to do. I think if I could go back in time, the horny 13-year-old would say Jabba's palace just to see Carrie in that bikini. But if I'm honest, I would say I would love to be on the Cloud City Weather Vane set, the Luke I am your father moment. I'd just to be on that set and see that thing happen, that moment, like the moment of all moments in, I'd say, not just Star Wars, but all of cinema. It's a top 5 cinematic moment. To see that would be, I think, really special. So especially because the light, just to hear Dave Prowse say the different lines, because famously he was terrible at giving stuff away to the press, so they gave him false lines on set. which was a smart move. Bless him. But yeah, just to see that be shot and just see all the actors at play, and that moment that we've watched a million times since actually happen for the first time for real would be phenomenal. That's a really good question. I've never heard that asked before. That's a really good question.
Well, I'm glad you like it. I think for me, in the past, I've thought, I think it would be Return of the Jedi in the moment where Luke, sort of the opposite to Luke and Vader in Empire, where Luke turns the lightsaber off, throws it away after he's sort of chopped off Vader's hand off, and he's realised that he's perhaps going down a similar path to his father, and that he doesn't want to do that. Now he's going to show his father some compassion, which in turn his father sort of returns to him at the end there. I think, I don't think that scene gets enough credit of like just how good Mark Hamill is in that scene. Yeah. So I think that one, and that's sort of the final moment of that trilogy, certainly. But having to think about it, I think I would also have to be on set for Revenge of the Sith, and obviously that moment in Palpatine's office when Anakin decides to, take Mace Windu's hand off, and then when he gets knighted as a Dark Lord of the Sith, I think that is sort of a moment there where it's going to set up the entire original trilogy, with Anakin making that split-second decision, and then, the way Palpatine knights him and sends him to the Jedi Temple. It's quite, Anakin's got tears coming down his face. Hayden Christensen does a fantastic job in that scene, I think, where he's sort of a broken Anakin becomes a angry, strong Vader. So yeah, I think that's a defining moment for the entire Star Wars story. So I think probably that one. Now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a great shout. Actually, the Jedi scene, the Return of the Jedi scene, marries up so nicely with that Empire scene, and I think Revenge of the Sith of all the films gets less credit than it deserves. I think I put Sith right up there with Star Wars and Empire, just because, just from everything, just the visuals are great, the design's great, the music's phenomenal, the performances are just on point. Everyone's really into their roles, and it would have been nice to have had a bit more Padme in that film, but I understand why Lucas did what he did. The focus has to be on Anakin and Obi-Wan, specifically Anakin. Now that's the story being told, so it's understandable in that sense. But Revenge of the Sith was such a good film, phenomenal film.
What is your next question for me, Mark?
Excuse me. I have my third question. It is, if you walked into a hangar and you could only pick one Imperial ship, it can be a starfighter, it can be a cruiser, it can be a dreadnought, it can be the Death Star, whatever you want, what would you pick?
Ooh, that's a hard one. There's a lot of awesome Imperial-looking ships, like from like the Lambda class shuttle to, TIE Interceptor look fantastic. I think what I'm going to go with is the TIE Defender. Obviously, two reasons. It looks awesome. It's got like sort of 3 sets of wings on there. It's a special project, as we learned in Star Wars Rebels from Grand Admiral Thrawn. It has a hyperdrive, so that's why I want it, because not only do I have the speed and versatility of a TIE, but I can also travel at hyperspace to get out of situations. So yeah, I think I'm going to go TIE Defender. But honourable mentions to, like I said, the Lambda class shuttle, which sort of just looks unique to this day.
Yeah. Still,
and also, what's it called? The TIE Interceptor, which I think we're going to see in the upcoming season of The Mandalorian, which is very exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many cool Imperial ships. I love the Executor, or the Executor, as the Americans say, but it's Executor because it sounds cooler. And even the ground stuff, obviously. The AT-AT and the AT-ST are awesome looking ships. I think the Imperials probably, you could argue they have the coolest ships. The Rebels have junked ships pulled together and sort of held together with sellotape and spitting glue. But the Imperial vessels, I mean, even into Bad Batch, they have at Marauder, which is a gorgeous ship. There's so many, but I think the Defender's a really good one. I wouldn't have thought of that. I love the TIE Striker as well, which I think is a beautiful ship from Rogue One. So I think they've got a really cool fleet. But yeah, you've got to go a long way to beat the Interceptor. Although the TIE Silencer, Kylo Ren's TIE Silencer is pretty damn cool as well. They've got a great fleet of ships.
They have indeed. I think For it just said that even like the Imperial speeder bikes on Endor, like
Yeah.
they look cool, even though it's just like their way of sort of ground transportation, their motorbike almost. It's still
Yeah.
sleek and smooth. My next question for you, Mark, is sort of it's a bit of a double-barreled one. So, what is your favorite thing in your Star Wars collection? And then also, what is one thing that is your holy grail item that you really want to own one day, but you don't own yet?
Oh, my favourite thing in my collection is I've got the first edition hardback of The Art of Star Wars, which I bought. Well, actually, my mum got it for me at Nostalgia and Comics in Birmingham. Lent me the money, I should say. She didn't buy it for me. She lent me the money. I paid her back. And I managed to get it signed in 96 or 97. I forget which year, when Ralph McQuarrie came over and did a memorabilia at the NEC. I managed to meet him and had 5 minutes talking. And I've told people about this before. They're like, you had 5 minutes talking to Macquarie? Really? You had 5 minutes talking to... Yep, I had 5 minutes talking to Macquarie. What did he talk about? Did you ask him about this? Did you ask him about that? No, it was just a normal chit chat. Isn't the weather nice? How was your flight? Did you enjoy your lunch? I mean, it was just a nothing conversation. But I had 5 minutes talking to Macquarie, and I'd got the Art of Star. He was only charging a fiver for his autographs. And so I got the Art of Star Wars, which he signed, and this was when he'd got a little, like a little collection book out, which was like postcards and stuff. It was a beautiful little box with postcards and stamps inside. That was the big thing. So he was signing loads of them, and also the portfolio. So all he'd signed was those two things all day. So I rock up with the Art of Star Wars, and I used to back in the day get Fantha Tracks, which of course Fantha Tracks is kind of a riff on Fantha Tracks. So I'd got an issue, I forget which issue, I should know. I think it was issue 12 or 13. But it was Ralph on the cover painting the snowscape, the Hoth snowscape, on a great big wall. And he saw that and he literally face lit up. He went, I haven't seen this for years. And he was opening it because it was like a poster magazine type thing. He opened it up and he was looking through it and reading it and grinning at stuff that he was reading in there, which was kind of cool for me to watch him reacting to this magazine I brought along. And then he signed the front. And when I went to pay, I went to give the guy, I'm sure it was a fiver. It was pennies. Gave him the tenner, and Ralph leaned over. No. I'm only charging him for the one, and he only charged me for the book. He didn't charge me to sign the Fantha Tracks. The Fantha Tracks cover, which was wow, mind blown. So I would say those two, they're in separate parts of the collection across the room. They're on other sides of the room, but they're kind of the same thing to me. The Holy Grail. I don't think I've got a Holy Grail because my collection's so. I'm not a completist. I try to, but it doesn't haunt me if I miss things because I kind of like chasing stuff down. I used to be in the 80s. I was a comic collector, like American comics. So you're always back then, especially you were always, if you didn't get them straight away, you were always chasing stuff down. So I used to go to comic marts in Birmingham and UK Comic Art Convention down in London and trying to find these missing comics. I've still got comics I've not had for I've had missing for like 35, 40 years. I'll get them one day. I'll probably kick the bucket before I get them, but it's on the list. Holy Grail. Wow, I don't honestly think there is a specific Holy Grail thing. Most of them were weird things like you mentioned Raiders earlier, and when you used to read Fantha Tracks, they'd have things inside advertising different stuff. And of course, it's Lucas, but it's not just Star Wars. It was Lucasfilm, and they had I can't even describe it. It was edited audio from Raiders into like a double-sided vinyl album, like the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they had this beautiful cover with Indy and Marion sort of windswept, stood in front of this big sort of painting of the Ark. Took me forever to find that, and eventually got it. So I think there was little bits like that across the collection that I've mostly got. I'll tell you one thing I never got that I would like. Fantha Tracks again. They did a Luke Skywalker Bespin jacket. This is kids thing. So I got the Bespin jacket. They did a Han Solo vest that I never got. So if I ever see the Han Solo vest that was only available through the fan club, I'll be all over that. So that would probably be the one. If thinking on it, I should start chasing that again. That would probably be the one. The Han Solo vest, Return of the Jedi vest that you can only get through Fantha Tracks.
It's crazy, isn't it? I think so. I remember when I really wanted the Phantom Menace Mace Windu figure, and I never got it. Sort of when I was 10, 11 when that movie came out, and I was playing with figures, for probably a good 5, 6 years after that point as well. Never got that Mace Windu. When I was on holidays, about 15, 16 in Disneyland Paris, and actually I had a Mace Windu, and I got a Mace Windu, but it wasn't that Phantom Menace one. But just probably just before COVID broke out, I was in Vienna on holiday, and we were walking past sort of a little shop, and I spotted some like sort of Phantom Menace figures in this sort of little independent store.
Yeah.
So I went in, there was a big box on the table, so I was flicking through, and then Mace Windu was there. So I grabbed him, obviously. I was like, this is one that I've wanted since I was like 11, that I've never seen to even grab him. And he's here. I probably could have found him on eBay, do you know what I mean? Or Clicker, but I wanted, so I bought him there, and my fiance at the time, my wife, was a bit like, why do you need that? I was like, it's hard to talk about, but yeah, this was something that I really wanted as like 11-year-old that I never saw, and then I've seen it here, so and it was cheap. It was probably £6, I imagine, once you broke it down. So I picked that up. So I think of seeing something that you were chasing as a youngster that you never got.
Yeah.
I certainly understand what that feels like. Speaking of grails, though, I think what I would love is I don't know why, but I would really obviously Return of the Jedi, obviously turning 40 years old this year. Obviously originally titled Revenge of the Jedi, and obviously some promotional material went out. So I would love to have an original Revenge of the Jedi poster, like that went out as marketing for that movie. Obviously very expensive.
The red one with the Vader's helmet and the two of them fighting, that one?
No, just the title, I think. It's just Revenge of the Jedi in red, I think.
Yeah.
Or did I have that on? Maybe it did. I think you're right.
They did a poster. Again, this was in Fantha Tracks. They did a poster, and it was beautiful, rich red, really rich red, and it was Vader's. It looked like the Empire helmet. It was like Vader's helmet, and then in front was Luke and Vader fighting. But it was clearly Luke and Vader clashing in the scene from Empire, and Luke's blade was blue because they didn't get one of the best kept secrets was the green blade in Jedi, so they kept that secret. So it was great. It was red and blue. But it did say at the bottom, I think it was in yellow, it said Revenge of the Jedi coming, May 1983 or whatever it was. And so it was a really striking poster. But yeah, you're right. They did have like a logo, a straight up logo poster. But Jedi was cool because it had more than one logo. You had the square logo, you had the long, wider logo, which I always thought looked really cool. That was on a lot of the books at the time. But yeah, Revenge of the Jedi. Yeah, and you know why they changed the title, don't you?
I imagine just because the Jedi doesn't do revenge, I imagine.
That was the logic of it, but it was originally called Revenge of the Jedi, and then Star Trek 2 was originally called The Revenge of Khan, and so Lucasfilm thought, we can't. It was a bit like when Rogue One and Rogue Nation, the Mission Impossible film, agreed to keep away from each other in case people got confused. It was the same logic. So George went, like you just said, Jedi can't have revenge. That doesn't make sense. So we'll call it Return the Jedi. And then Paramount changed it to Wrath of Khan. So nobody had revenge in 1982. But there you go.
But I think, obviously you mentioned Ralph McQuarrie. I would love to own a McQuarrie original one day. I mean, it's pipe dream, but one day I would love to have a McQuarrie original in the collection. Would be fantastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like you say, even if it was just a doodle. I'm friends with Paul Bateman, who worked with Ralph quite closely in restoring a lot of his original artwork. I always remember Paul telling me that he was at Ralph's house once, and Ralph would draw on anything. Literally, if there was a spare gap on a page of notes, he would draw something in the gap. And he needed his boiler fixing, so they were sorting his boiler out, and when they removed the boiler, they found behind the boiler wadges and wadges and wadges of sketches and doodles and stuff. And Paul was like, what on earth is this? And Ralph was like, no, it's nothing. And there was like some of the earliest ever Star Wars and Empire sketches in there that was just stuff behind the boiler because the boiler was rattling or something like that. It was just to keep it in place. So, he was that kind of guy that would just draw on anything. But yeah, just to have one of those, if there's 6 doodles on a page of A4, just cut me one off. That'll do for me. I'll get it framed, and it'll be my Mona Lisa. Be amazing.
Definitely. What is your next question for me?
My next question for you: of all the eras of Star Wars, not not specific eras like prequel, sequel, original, but it could be if you wanted it to be. But what do you think's the most excuse me? What do you think's the most interesting era of Star Wars? As a fan, given the content that you got, which one would you say was the most interesting? Not the best or your favourite, but the most interesting.
I think for me, what sticks out is sort of the prequel era. I think as I said, sort of in the early '90s, sort of I was introduced to Star Wars through my older cousin, Alan, who sort of he was a Star Wars fan. He had the original trilogy on VHS, and I watched them first seen them at his house, and that's how I became a Star Wars fan. Almost, I use the term tweener. So I was in between trilogies almost.
Yeah.
The special editions weren't a thing yet, so I was almost a fan back when new fans weren't being made almost. So I'd seen Star Wars on VHS, became a fan. Obviously, birthdays, Christmases, had my own VHSs bought for me, so I had them so I could watch them. Obviously, Power of the Force 2 lines out at that point, so I'm getting those figures. Obviously, special editions come out, so Star Wars is back in cinemas. I get to watch it in the cinema for the first time. It's slightly different in my VHSs, but not too different, similar. But then I remember the buzz about the Phantom Menace coming out, and it was new Star Wars, so no one had seen this Star Wars before, nobody. So it didn't matter how young I was or how long I've been a fan. I could go to my dad, and my dad was in the same boat as me. Not that my dad was a Star Wars fan, but even take Alan, my cousin. We were in the same boat. You know what I mean? He didn't just make this thing, and he knew all about it. But then going into this, I think I remember telling him what's going to happen. He was I don't know. We're going to have to find out. I remember just the hype. I remember there was little magazines releasing the news of the world and stuff, and it'd be the first pictures from the movie and little character bios and stuff. And I remember the little snippets of information that came out, and just how exciting it was to sort of be on that roller coaster of newness. And it was this thing that we knew and loved so much, but also we were going to go on an adventure that we didn't know where it was going to end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I agree. Actually, even though my heart's with the OT, I think the prequel trilogy era was by far the most interesting. Because one of the criticisms Star Wars gets is that there's lots of gaps in Star Wars, and we as savvy Star Wars fans know that Lucasfilm will go, I can do a comic series about that. You can do a book about that. We'll fill that story in Shadow of the Sith or whatever, and we'll expand it and explain it if you like. What is the Clone Wars other than 7 seasons of a show telling you the backstory of the prequel trilogy, and the history of it's exposition filling in that gap between 2 films, but done beautifully. And I thought Dark Horse did an amazing job, and Del Rey did an amazing job, and just all the other little things that spun off it, like the original Clone Wars animated Tartakovsky stuff. Hasbro were absolutely smashing it throughout that era. So there was so many cool things, and also weirdly, you could argue the prequel trilogy, it started in '98 with Prelude to Rebellion and that first Mace Windu figure and the trailer, the first Phantom trailer in '98, and went right through to certainly acquisition era when Clone Wars stops. Lucasfilm stopped making Clone Wars because obviously it gets awkward because Disney's bought it, but that was released on Cartoon Network, which was a Warner company. So Lucasfilm stopped Clone Wars. It wasn't the other way around. So what's that? What's that? 15 years? The prequel trilogy era, essentially. That was a proper, huge, massive chunk of Star Wars time, and I think most of it was fascinating. And in there, you've got the trilogy. So yeah, I would agree. I think that was phenomenal time, and I think now it's getting the love that it deserves, because some people were sniffy about it for no good reason, and I think the films are reappraised now. That the story was always phenomenal. I thought, the depth and the history and the lore of it. So yeah, I would agree with you on that. Definitely prequel era for me.
And then I think this look at Tales of the Jedi, which is essentially the prequel era again, being told even more in depth.
Yeah, they need to do more of that. It was kind of heartbreaking that came out sort of in the middle of Andor and was come and gone in a week, and yet the content in there was that Yaddle episode was phenomenal. It was just so good, and there was some really cool thoughts in there, in the way that you'll never look at Dooku in the same way again after watching Tales of the Jedi, and I really do want to go back and watch it. So I hope now, they've gone back and done, I think we get season 2 of Visions this year as well, in addition to the stuff that was mentioned earlier. I think Acolyte's probably next year. But I really hope they do more Tales of the Jedi. 6 little sort of 15-minute episodes, just expanding on certain characters, because they could do a Tales of the Jedi of the original trilogy era if they wanted. I know they've got the assets for sort of Clone Wars era stuff, and making the assets is the costly thing, so it's probably not as easy as it sounds. But nevertheless, I think there's benefit to that.
Yeah, and for me, there's that many different Jedi that you could tell a story about any Jedi. So you could run this for as many seasons as you want. You know what I mean? It could run for as long as The Simpsons. Um, and you could have you could do
Yeah.
prequel Eva Jedi, original trilogy Eva Jedi, sequel Jedi. You could do High Republic Jedi, or Republic. You could mix it up with like different ones. You could do 2 different Jedi from different eras to focus on one season. Possibilities are endless, really.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, totally. Of all the groups of characters that's got the longest history, I mean, I don't know how we sit now in with the current chronology, but it was always the case that the Dawn of the Jedi stuff was tens of, it was like 20,000 years ago sort of thing. It was like way back when they just found the Force, So they've got some crazy potential. Not that you'd want to cover that big of an area, but you, as we mentioned earlier, you got Old Republic still going on, and that's Jedi versus Sith across what was the galaxy. It's obviously a fraction of what the galaxy is now, but there's so many stories you could do. Yeah, definitely some big scope there.
Definitely. My last and final question, I believe, and question number 5 for you, Mark, is which up and coming Star Wars project are you most looking forward to, and why? Obviously, it could include a project that's like the 2nd season or 3rd season of a show that's coming out. So you could see Mandalorian season 3, for example, because you're excited about that season coming up. But yeah, which up and coming Star Wars project are you most excited about, and why? And it can be across any medium as well.
Wow. That's a tough one, because I'm very intrigued by Skeleton Crew. I'm really curious to see what that's going to be and be about, because John Watts did that Spider-Man trilogy, which was awesome. So he's good with young actors. They've said they want that Goonies vibe, which could be a lot of fun if they get it right, and don't go too silly. And Jude Law's good in everything that he's in, so that intrigues me. Obviously, as you just said, Mando season 3 is only a few weeks away. The trailer looked great, gave nothing away, which is the best kind of trailer, and the visuals look so good on that. So I think that feels like it's going to be something a bit special. I'm really interested by what I've seen. There's some shots sneaked out of the Acolyte. That looks interesting. Also, given it's High Republic, which I'm enjoying. I'm behind as well, but I'm enjoying that. I'm up to date with the comics, which I'm really enjoying. Just started The Blade, and I'm loving the ongoing Kevin Scott title, which is excellent. So that's an interesting era. So I'm curious about that. But and of course Ahsoka, which I think could be really special if Filoni's really had his hands on the steering wheel for that, and she's the character that you associate with him the most. I would imagine he's put his heart and soul into that. So that's got the potential to be really awesome. But there's always the danger that you've got to get. I think with Ahsoka, you've got to just find the balance, because it would be very easy to make her like the prime Jedi of every Jedi ever. So you've got to temper that a little bit and give her the challenges. So that if that's done right, that could be phenomenal. But the one I'm really looking forward to is Andor season 2, because I thought Andor season 1 was the best thing, the best Star Wars thing. Rogue One and Solo were the 2 things in the Disney era that really lit me up, and I would put Andor up with that, but in a different way. Rogue One was just action and just exciting and interesting and ballsy, and Solo was just the most fun Star Wars ever since Jedi. It was just, I was grinned all the way through Solo, and do every time I watch it. But Andor was so clever, and not in a smug way, just clever Star Wars, and really got you thinking, and the performances were stunning, and the visuals were great. Just everything about Andor was top drawer. The music was clever. I interviewed Nicholas Patel about the score and on Making Tracks, and just the little ideas he had, and how he worked with Tony Gilroy, because they lived a few blocks from each other, so they'd just meet up and go through the story and the music that goes with it. And just thought outside the box. Don't have to do any John Williams stuff. Just do your own thing, which again is brave, because how do you get away from John Williams? Why would you want to? and then they go and do like Goranson did, which sounds more like a Rocky score to me. But there you go. Just nailed it. I would have to say, right now, Andor season 2, which is 2 years away, so it's not coming anywhere soon. I hope they do a season 2 Book of Boba Fett because it didn't blow me away, but I think there's still a good story to be told, and I really hope they do more with Kenobi. So yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, Andor season 2 for me.
Speaking of Kenobi, I think Ewan's been speaking this weekend about wanting to do more. He's certainly up for it, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a story to be told, and a weird fact that means nothing to nobody else, but me and Ewan are exactly the same age to the day, and so I've always kind of followed him because this just weird, quirky, shared birthday thing, and also he's an awesome actor. But I just think with him in that role now, being the right age for the role, I think the character of Kenobi was 59, but Alec Guinness was 63. So even if you put the ages correct, you've still got 6 or 7 years. Plus, Ewan don't look his age, so he could be doing that role for another 10 years comfortably. To lead you up to A New Hope, and then of course there's the handover of the role, if you like, to Alec Guinness, which is a weird way of thinking of it when you think he picked it up and now he's all these years later kind of handing it back off to Alec Guinness. But yeah, I definitely think there's more to be told. And of course, the great thing about Kenobi, one of many, because I really thought it was excellent, Vivian Lyra Blair was brilliant as Leia, and now she's growing up. We interviewed her on Making Tracks again very recently. She's charming. She's only 10. She's phenomenal. You wouldn't know it. I forgot I was talking to a 10-year-old after 5 minutes. I just interviewed her. She was awesome. So, there's that with her and the character, and just seeing Bail Organa again, and just certain characters can come in and go out. You might see more as 3PO and R2, and, it's just different little things that they can do. So I think there's definitely some more scope for Kenobi.
Definitely. That is the end of my questions. Do you have one more for me, Mark?
I have one more question, and this will take you back to your childhood. My original question was, what is your favourite vintage action figure? But that's unfair, because I'm a vintage era guy. You're not. So what is your favourite? I think you might have already answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. What is your favourite action figure?
It's funny because since when the lockdown started, I started collecting vintage. So I never had vintage as a child, but I've got about they're all in storage at the minute because I'm moving house and renovating the house. But and there's no mint on cards or anything. But I haven't invested too much in them. But my plan is I want to try and, again, a bit like you, I'm sort of chasing, completing them all. But I'm enjoying the chase. I'm not in a hurry to do it. But I want to get one of each of the vintage. And then once I've done that, I'll start replacing them for like better ones, better paint jobs, all the accessories, all the vinyl type of thing. So I do own about 20 maybe. And I do own a Lando with, I believe, is the original vinyl cape. So that's like probably the one I've got in the best condition, if that makes sense. But favourite figure, I am probably going to say, I think that the Jango Fett that they released for Attack of the Clones 2002, so probably going to 2001 actually, where it's sort of the helmet comes off, it's got the jetpack that fires the missile, it's got the grappling hook that works on the arm, the blasters actually fit in the holsters on the side. Like, it's just a complete figure that, like, as soon as I saw it, I popped for it. And, like, again, at that age, I was probably, probably starting to go out of it a little bit. I've actually, like, playing with him. But when I got him, I was 12, 13, 14. But I was like, no, like, it's too good of a figure. Like, not to like, it just, my imagination went wild, like, just having it. So I'd say that Jango Fett is what I would say is probably my favourite.
That's a good shout. That era, like you say, that era of figures, I think when Hasbro, I think they probably had access to more of the factories over in the Far East, so they were able to tool up and make more figures. And kids now, apps is the thing, and toy collecting is not what it was. It is a collector's thing now. It is folks to me anyway, how it seems to be, is folks in their 30s, 40s, 50s and beyond are more interested than kids are. Kids seem to want to play with the super stylized stuff, but that's just my angle on it. But yeah, I don't know. I think for me, my first figure, this tells you what I knew about Star Wars when when it first came out. I think I got my first figure in probably 70, late 78. I got a Death Star droid. I wanted 3PO and couldn't find him. and it ended up it was either Death Star droid or Greedo, I think, which I didn't get for years and years and years, and I ended up buying Death Star droid because he looked like 3PO because I just thought 3PO was cool. And just kept going. But if I had to pick a favourite vintage figure for me, it would be probably Han Solo Hoth. I just love that figure. I played with that toy to bits when I was a kid, and I have got one on card. I've got a couple of loose ones, but I've got one on card that I'm not a card collector. I've got a couple, but yeah, that I had to get that one. It was just too cool not to get, and it's a Palatoy one as well, so it's a bit special. But yeah, Han Hoth for me.
And obviously, that Django I mentioned, obviously I don't own it now. I was like, I give my Star Wars figures away when I was, a young adult, late teenager. So it was heavy play with, but so that's one I need to buy again as well if I ever see it. Which I imagine
Part of
I
the
will.
fun, though, isn't it? It's part of the fun. Get out there and find them again.
It is indeed. So I think I will do that. Obviously, yeah, my vintage collection's grown slowly. I'm excited to get my house sorted out and then get set up with my new office and get them displayed. Then I'll look to buy more, I think. But so I've got about 20 vintage that I'm slowly collecting here and there.
It's a good thing to chase. It's a good thing. And also, again, being in the UK, we're lucky because there's events happening every weekend and there's collectors' fairs. There's things like Echo Base, which is happening next weekend, I think, in Redditch and farthest from, which is a long way down for you, but down on the south coast. But there's always events going on around the country that give you the opportunity to hop on these things. And you just mentioned Star Wars Fan Fun Day, which is coming up again in May. I think they just announced the first guest, Femi Taylor. That's going to have all sorts of dealers and traders there. So there's plenty of opportunities.
There certainly is. That brings an end to Knowing Me, Knowing You, Mark. I hope you found it all right.
I did. I loved it. I love talking about Star Wars. You could probably tell it was. I enjoyed it so much. I even stopped coughing, which hasn't happened for weeks.
Well, I'm glad we give you that little bit of respite. Before we wrap it up, as I mentioned before, Mark, obviously you are the daily content manager over at Fantha Tracks. Do you just want to give the listeners a little, for those who don't know what Fantha Tracks is, what it is and where to find it?
Yeah, we're a daily news site. So we've been going for 5 years, just over now. Can't believe that. There you go. There's the cough back. We daily news, as I say. So it's all the latest stuff that's going on. We have interviews on there. We've got a podcast network with 6 shows, and the 7th one to join very soon. So that's nice and busy. And a YouTube channel. We do a weekly sort of magazine format news roundup on a Sunday night. Called Good Morning Tatooine. So there's all sorts of stuff. There's a good bunch of us involved in it as well. And we get out to a lot of events. So we're fortunate enough we're doing Celebration. We've been to other stuff around the UK. We've been over to Europe and done stuff. New York Comic Con a few times. And, so we do get out and about a lot. And we're lucky that we're a team that all pretty much gets on and has a laugh. And gets on with the work as well, because when you're a news site, you've got to make sure you're staying on top of what's going on, and it is literally a daily thing. When we finish, I'll go and cook tea, and then I'll be back on the computer writing until snooze time. But fanthatracks.com. You can find us on all the socials at Fantha Tracks, and just come and visit, say hi. And if you see any of us at any of the conventions with our Fantha Tracks shirts, you won't miss them. They stand out. They stand out a mile. Just come over and say hello.
Who have you given Fantha Tracks shirts to? You've given some very special exclusive people, haven't you? I believe.
we have so far. We are planning on more, and we're having a conversation this week about who. We haven't decided yet. We have one honorary member, Kathleen Kennedy. So we were fortunate enough to meet up with her at. I'd met her before. I met her a couple of times at celebrations, and I interviewed her at the Rogue One press screening. So I had met her before. And I just got very fortunate. I wrote an article about her winning the Irving Thalberg honorary Oscar that her and Frank Marshall, her husband, won. And I wrote a piece on Fantha. And I just got a message via somebody at Lucasfilm saying, Kathleen just wanted to pass on her thanks for the article that you wrote on Fantha Tracks, and just sent a little paragraph from her saying thank you for the article. We were both really pleased with it and much appreciated. So that blew me away. So that was very nice of all the people to notice an article on a fan site, her of all people, which was very cool. And so that kind of put a crack in the door for me to sort of contact somebody at Lucasfilm and say, is there any chance that if we made this shirt that we could give it to Kathleen at Anaheim and at Chicago rather, and induct her as an honorary member. And the message went up the chain and came back, and yes, that would be good. So we arranged a time where to meet quietly away from all the crowds, and then I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but there's a few pictures of the team as was, and then me giving her the shirt. I don't know if she wears it. I don't know if she's still got it, but she's still our honorary member. So we have one honorary member, which is a pretty good one to have, I would say. So very, very, very fortunate for that to all come together.
Certainly is. It's very, very, very awesome. So sounds like a great experience. And can the people find you individually on social media, Mark?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm usually on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. Just type in Mark Newbold and you'll find me on Facebook. But Twitter's where I usually sort of knock around. So I'm a Hitchhikers fan. So I'm prefect_timing. So not perfect timing, but prefect as in Ford prefect. Prefect_timing on Twitter, or at Fantha Tracks. Either. I'm sort of knocking around on one or the other. Sometimes on the wrong account, liking the wrong thing, so I have to go back and change it. But hey ho, that's technology for you. But yeah, prefect_timing for me on Twitter, and Instagram as well. I'm the same on Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Really enjoyed it. I've been looking forward. I know we've had a few false starts, but I'm glad we finally made it happen. It's been great fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Well, indeed, I'm sure we will. Plenty of other Star Wars to talk about. So we'll definitely get that hooked up, and obviously look forward to maybe sharing a beer with you at Star Wars Celebration coming this April.
Oh, count on it. Definitely. Yeah, make that happen. No doubt.
Fantastic. Well, listeners, thank you very much for listening. Remember, may the Force be with you, and always tell that to Kanja Club.
Hello, Star Wars listeners. This is Savannah Odit. You might know me as host of The Dorky Diva Show with my co-host Brian Balance. I am also producer of The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, which is a Star Wars-inspired audio drama that we produced over the last year. If you love stories about smugglers, courage, heroic characters, and maybe a few foes along the way, you should go to thedorkydivashow.com and listen to The Adventures of the Zolan Dart today.
Shout! We've got your pigs.
Were any of the critters harmed?
What did you do now?
I didn't do anything. I just freaked out for no reason.
It was nice doing business with you again. Maybe next time we could deliver something less temperamental.
Now, what you call temperamental, I call fun.
Hey, is there a place nearby where I can make some repairs?
3 clicks south of here, you'll find a small spaceport. They should have what you need, as long as it's nothing too big.
Dynamic class? My stars, you don't hear about many of those still being space-worthy.
It's been in my family for a while.
She's pretty great. Any chance you have a hover cart we can use to load up?
I'll check out the holonet to see if anything new has come up in the sector.
My name is Sereth Khan. I am the chief here on Kamai. My people and I have been experiencing food shortages as of late due to unforeseen natural occurrences. We are looking to hire someone.
I say we take this one. The pay is great, and it's the type of job we're familiar with.
Welcome. You must be Captain Otoa. I've already sent word to Pac 2 to expect you in the next cycle or so.
You told him we were coming before we even accepted the job. That's rather presumptuous, isn't it?
Perhaps, though once I received confirmation that you were interested and on your way here, I couldn't help but hope.
Fair enough. Well, we'll be back as soon as we can.
Well, that's not good.
Is that blaster fire I hear?
So you're the one.
Captain, it sounds like they want to do this the hard way.
I love when they got some fight in them.
This is bad. This is bad.
We're about to have a lot of company.
I'll see you soon.